This is TWiT.
Let's jump into something that, I think it's going to be non-controversial, nothing that Cheebert and I have a particular stake in, nothing that we've spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on. Super simple topic, net neutrality. Yeah, it's our favorite. It's back. I know we've tried to delay it. We've pushed it back. We've pushed it back. We know we covered a lot, but it's back in the news because, folks, it's about to die. That's right. According to sources, in December, the start of December, the FCC is ready to nix net neutrality in its entirety. Now, we understand that over the last couple of months, they've set the ground for this. This is not a surprise. They've already gone through the reclassification of ISPs from utilities back to services, which basically means the FCC can no longer regulate them the way that they were supposed to. And we know that FCC Chairman Ajit Pai has long been a detractor of anything called remotely anything like net neutrality. He is a big proponent of the market will provide. He is a big proponent of competition will solve. And it doesn't matter how many people come forth and tell him that there is no competition in the ISP market, there is no competition in the broadband market, he will not be swayed. Well, FCC Chairman Ajit Pai will unveil his final proposal next week. It sets up a vote at the commissioner's regularly scheduled monthly meeting on December 14th, according to both Bloomberg and Reuters. Now, the FCC hasn't publicly confirmed the December vote, probably because they weren't ready to handle the first or second or third backlash. But as Bloomberg and Reuters have reported, the timeline was confirmed by people familiar with Pai's plans, and it just makes sense. They want some sort of major victory before the end of the year. Now, we remember that net neutrality was starting to go down in flames as the FCC killed Title II. And not only did they kill Title II, but they did it in such a way that's going to make it difficult for that decision to be reversed in the future. Now, Pai was on the short end, back when he was not the FCC commissioner, of a 3-2 vote to reclassify broadband providers as common carriers back in 2015. So I think there's no mystery here, right, Cheebert? I mean, when we look at this is where we were heading. People kind of wanted not to think about it, but ultimately, yeah, we're going to go back to pre-2013 FCC.
You know, my big comment is Ajit Pai the Grinch that's going to steal net neutrality out from under the consumer's Christmas tree? You know, that's kind of what it's coming down to. Yeah, we're going to go back. We might as well be rolling the clock back, 10, maybe even 15 years. And, considering how much Congress is using net neutrality as examples, it really leads me to believe that maybe Mr. Pai isn't even listening to his overlords. Yeah. I don't like this at all. But yeah, I saw it coming too. And I think they're doing it right now because, one, they want it before the end of the year, but I think they're also doing it because a lot of people aren't paying attention. So yeah.
We've got Emily the Strange in the chat room. Emily the Strange. Yes, actually, Emily is the Strange. But she brings up a very good point, and she wants to know about Title II. Does it mean it's dead for other things that use it, or is it only Title II for ISPs? Let's go a little bit back, because it's always good to take a refresher course in how we got to this point. You may remember that when we first had to go through this way, way, way back, this is before most of our audience was born, they had the ability to classify internet services as either a service or a utility. Now, if you are a utility, you run under different rules. Like, for example, if you are water, if you're power, a utility can't just keep jacking up their rates. It's not just the market will provide, because the government grants you some sort of functional monopoly in exchange for you supporting and looking after the benefits of the community at large. That's the deal. You get this wonderful right to roll out a service and basically be unchallenged, but in exchange, you have to be regulated. Well, the cable companies, according to the Cable Communication Act of 1986, they essentially took the same deal. It wasn't under the original Title II, but it was effectively the same as Title II. They said, we will accept these almost exclusive right-of-way so that we can lay down a network to serve cable communications in exchange for, and this is actually in the language of the 1986 bill, looking after the common good of the communities that we serve. The problem is that language was incredibly nebulous, and FCC commissioners all the way down the road, both Republican and Democrat, have basically allowed them to get away from that responsibility. They no longer hold them to the common good clause. Well, Title II, as the previous chairman tried to establish in the FCC, was a way to sort of call the ISPs back to that. They would say, look, you've been getting away with murder all these years. We want to make sure that you look after the common good as you said you would. Well, in the landmark Verizon versus the FCC case back in 2014 and 2013, Verizon won because the court said, well, you can't tell them what to do unless you hold them under Title II. However, the courts also said, as the FCC, you can reclassify them as a utility, which would then hold them under Title II. So that's exactly what Wheeler did. He reclassified them so that they were now utilities, which means the FCC now had the ability to regulate them and hold them to the agreements that they first made in the 1986 Cable Communications Act. What Chairman Pai is doing is he's removing that. And he's essentially saying this is not the FCC's business to regulate. In fact, he's saying it's the FTC's business to regulate ISPs. Of course, the FTC has even less manpower than the FCC, so there will be no regulation there ever, unless they do a massive increase of budget and a very quick roll-up of human resources. So that's, in a nutshell, how we got here. What Title II was trying to do was to make the ISPs do what they promised to do. And now we have a chairman who is essentially saying, you know what, we're going to forget the fact that we gave these companies a functional monopoly. We're going to forget the fact that the American people have already put more than $200 billion into the telco industry in the form of tax loopholes and reductions. And instead, we're going to say, well, now the market will solve, even though this is clearly not a level playing field. Cheebert, that's about as much as I can do without going crazy ranty. Where are you on this?
Well, I'm actually going to go and try and answer Emily the Strange's question. So I'm doing a real fast lookup. Anyway, Title II may have been back in the 1930s when it was first passed. And her question is, why did AT&T get broken up for being a monopoly then? My personal opinion, this is my personal opinion, is that AT&T was, as a monopoly, really wasn't doing anything but the absolute barest minimum. So I actually lived, obviously I lived through the breakup. And back in the day, I actually had sold lease line modems, but I actually had to be AT&T certified in order to hook them up. There was a lot of regulation, a lot of rules, not regulations, a lot of rules put on us by Ma Bell, and it strangled competition. Now, once the deregulation happened, all of a sudden, instead of having 3 or 4 modem manufacturers, all of a sudden we had hundreds. We had competition. We had amazing technical innovations. So Title II has been very, very unevenly enforced, very, very unevenly used, and it's all being driven by the FCC, mostly by the FCC chair. And this is why I'm kind of getting all hot under the collar, so to speak, that we're losing all this ground that Tom Wheeler gained for the consumer. Ajit Pai's, actions are very clearly big business. They're very clearly pro ISPs. And, just looking at that example we had about Detroit having to put in their own community network really and truly shows that something ain't working, and maybe I think we need a firmer hand, not a looser hand. Yeah,
we've got JJ to the 4884 and HighWeb in the chat room. They're both, and I get this, they're both saying, wait a minute, maybe this is a forward-looking policy. Maybe this is something that he's hoping to institute as change into the future, and I 100% disagree with that. If you look at what he's trying to do with, quote-unquote, deregulating the market, this is going back to before the change. He wants to create Ma Bell. I mean, look at the FCC and what they're doing in other markets. They've now just removed all the rules that prevent the conglomeration of media companies, because we all know that when you have just 1 or 2 media companies, you get bad media. You get bad news, you get bad programming. Well, the FCC has basically said, no, hands off, you can do whatever you want. That's not good for the consumer. Look at the very first thing that Ajit Pai did when he became the chairman of the FCC. He removed the restriction that was placed on ISPs from selling your data. The ISPs were going to be held to the standard that they're not allowed to sell your private metadata without asking you first. He said, no, you can go ahead and sell whatever you want. How in the world is that friendly to consumers? How in the world is that friendly to competition when you have all that data concentrated in a handful of companies? So, I mean, when you look at what the policies of the FCC are doing, this is what has me so puzzled. I understood Ajit Pai's background. I understood where he was coming from. I understood he's a laissez-faire market guy. But the policies that he's been enacting and the way that he's been running the FCC don't seem commensurate with those political leanings. I mean, just look at what happened with investment. The ISPs, when the net neutrality debate happened back in 2015 and when the policies first went into effect, they said, oh, this is going to kill investment. This is going to make it impossible for us to invest in infrastructure. You will never see new products and services from these telcos because they won't make money. Those years where we had the net neutrality regulations were the highest investment rates on history. The telcos put so much money into their networks because they realized, oh my goodness, if we don't increase the quality of our networks, if we don't increase the quality of our services, we won't compete, we go out of business. Now that it's being rolled back, look at the investment rate. It's dropped almost 70% in 2017. Why is that? Well, maybe because they realize that they're about to be granted the same monopoly that they had back when Ma Bell was still in operation. I mean, again, this is just a rant. This is just me. But if you look at it, it really does kind of make sense. Cheebert, the question is, we've got at least another 2 years of this. What do you do? The FCC operates on its own. It's those who are against the change are completely outnumbered here. Is there anything to slow this down or at least make it so that when we have another administration, we can reverse some of these things?
Realistically, the chat room's blowing up. Everybody's talking. Yeah, the only way we can really and truly stop this is for Congress to actually pass a law saying no, hands off. And I'm sure, other than, people like Al Franken trying to use net neutrality to handle things like Lifeline, the reality is we need to rise up. We need to call, write, email, telegram, whatever, our congressional delegations and say we are displeased. We need to make them know that they are going to get voted out of office if they don't do something about reining in Ajit Pai. Now, I don't know if it's going to work. I agree with JJ. Al Franken's kind of a, whatevers. But the reality is we the people are supposed to be the government, not the guys in Washington, D.C. We the people. And if we the people don't call, if we the people don't email, if we the people don't make our voices heard, we the people become we the sheep. Sorry.
Well, good. I think we've solved it. That's the last time we're ever going to have to mention net neutrality, right, Cheebert?